What, what do you do with the quarterbacks this week? I mean, do you go into it wide open, competition, or how's that work for you?
The same thing as Dan told y'all before. We chart everything they do all week. We chart it and we give them results daily. What they've done. Last week Tyler had an exceptional week of practice. I think he completed over 90% of his passes throughout practice, so it's an exceptional week. It shows you that somebody was ready to play. As a coach, you put barriers of what you look for on a quarterback and when he goes, and obviously he showed us that he was ready to play for that week. And we're going to do whatever it takes to win, whatever it has to take. Chris didn't play that bad. I mean, when you look at his total grade on the deals, Tyler played really well.
Is it tougher maybe to come in the middle of the game than to start?
There's a lot of things in that game that was going on. Early we kind of stumped our toe a couple times. Once we stumped it in the red zone, from scoring points there. As the game went on, you could tell that probably UAB had prepared for Chris to play. And Tyler comes in with a good changeup and connects on some balls and does some really nice things.
Was there ever a thought there, with as good as Tyler was last week, to maybe start him or at least put him in the first half a little bit to give a different look?
Well, again, like we said, Chris wasn't playing that bad. It wasn't like he was just really messing it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a situation. He had missed one or two throws. He'd missed a curl route, and then he'd missed a short throw into the boundary. There was a couple of drops. And so, that plays on the quarterback's mind, too.
I guess what I meant was even before the game, just knowing how good Tyler had been in practice.
I mean, that was always in our mind. That's always in our mind. We chart everything every week. We've got it on film. We do it for our players. We do it for our players' parents. We do it for everybody. I mean, you come up and look at it if you want to. That's exactly what we do. We show it to them and say, here's exactly where you're doing and what you need to improve on. Here's your mental mistakes. Here's your reads. Tyler had an exceptional week last week. So, I mean, we felt comfortable putting him in the game. Anytime you feel comfortable with a kid, give him a shot. And obviously, his shot paid off for him. It's just like Chris a couple years ago. When he came in, he had an opportunity. He had prepared, and he was prepared to play and did a nice job.
What does Tyler do well right now?
I'm sorry?
What does Tyler do really well right now that you like when
Well,
he gets
in there? It's just executing the game plan. That's the big part of it. When you go through and you look at it and you put down everything on paper, here's what you did right, here's what you did wrong, and if the rights overweigh the wrongs, it's probably a pretty good sign now. And that's the issue with Tyler. He grasped, he understood what we were trying to get done, and high completion averages throughout the week was good.
Is he a guy that could eventually, it seems like he could get on some streaks throwing the ball where he could be, you know what I mean? You've got some kind of streak throwers like that who, if they get hot, can really lead you down the field. Do you think he has that tendency?
Again, it's all based on preparation. For you to say it's a streak or me to say it's a streak, I hope it's prepared. He prepared well for him to understand exactly what the coverages are and what the reads are. And, when that happens, the game slows down for a quarterback. All of a sudden he sees things that he hadn't seen before. He says, wow, that's pretty easy.
How much do you think Tyler opened up the run game with the passes he was completing in that second half?
Well, I think he did. I think that obviously helped us a bunch here in that area. First half wasn't great. Second half we played a lot better. I think we doubled our output offensively in the second half. So obviously it's a lot better half for us.
Dan says that it's always a wide open competition to start. I mean, as Tyler, how long has he had that mentality that he's good enough to be the starter?
Well, again, you got to look back throughout the deal. He was a little banged up there early. Came off the LSU game and he got a knee brace on the next week. Yeah. So it's pretty hard. Our main concern is the health of our kids. We don't want to put them in a bad situation where they're not ready to play. And, we monitor that every week. You don't want to put a guy out there on one leg. You don't want to put a guy out there that's beat up or bruised up or something's wrong with him. And so, we monitor. We don't always tell y'all because the first thing we tell y'all goes in the newspaper, and then people can prepare for us. Yes. And so we monitor that each week. We make sure that they're healthy, make sure they're ready to go. And, it also shows up on those sheets that we turn into them each day, what they've done.
Looking